Hi guys, day 21. Today we're talking about the importance of talking to strangers and also covering what happened with Miracle 5, the fifth miracle that happened in 1993. Also I want to talk about why I'm so thankful for Reverend Bill King. So yesterday I shared a little bit about, and by the way, when I talk about the importance of talking to strangers, I'm not talking about telling your kids, hey, just go approach any random stranger and strike up a conversation with them. What I am talking about is, like I gave the example where I ended up being approached by someone who, was praising God, and he was happy, full of joy, and he was, just got out of jail, and he was a former drug dealer, but he needed money to get a Social Security card. And so I put myself in a situation that could have been a little bit dangerous, going down some rougher neighborhoods of downtown, just to help him out and buy this Social Security card that he needed. Really, I guess what I'm trying to say with that is sometimes we need to give people the benefit of the doubt. A lot of times if you've ever been approached by a homeless person, I know I've been approached by several homeless people, and they're asking for money for one reason or another. I'll give you an example of kind of how I handle that situation. There was one time where a guy was holding a cardboard sign that said, "Need medicine for my wife, God bless you." And it said God bless you, so I just started the conversation and just started talking to him about God, and we had kind of a longer conversation, and I was asking him about his wife, and he told me what she was going through and whatnot. I was like, oh, I'd love to help you. How about we go buy some medicine for her right now? And he just kind of was like, actually they're closed right now. The pharmacy is closed, so we can't. And I was like, okay, well, how about we get together sometime when they're open and I can help you out this way? He's like, well, actually, I don't even have the prescription yet, so I need to get the prescription, and the appointment isn't until Thursday, and so it's going to be a while before I can actually get the medicine, but if you can just give me some money right now, then I'll have it so that I can buy the medicine later. And so I was saying, okay, well, how about you just give me a call when you've got it. I can give you my phone number, and we can work it out that way. And he's like, oh, sorry, I'm homeless, I don't have a phone. So I was like, okay, well, how about we just arrange a time where we get together when you think you'll have the prescription in hand when it's open. I'd be more than happy to help you this way. And his response to that was, I wasted all my time talking to you, and I didn't even get a box of cigarettes out of this. And then he walks away all angry at me. And that's not the first time that's happened to me. There was another time where someone a homeless person said, I just need some money to pay for the bus to get to the homeless shelter tonight, so I have a place to sleep. And I was like, well, I'd be happy to go to the bus station with you and pay for the bus ticket for you. And he didn't say anything. He just walked on, and it was kind of like, if you call people's bluff, you can kind of see what they're really all about in that regard. But it does take time. It does take time to have that conversation, to get to know someone and find out what are they really. Are they being upfront with me, or are they just trying to con me? We think a lot of times we give money to a homeless person and we think we're helping them, when actually what we're doing is we're doing the exact opposite. We're hurting them. We're basically reinforcing their lifestyle of conning people in order for them to just do whatever they want. And I would say most of the time when you give someone that money, what they do with that money is probably something you would object to. I'm not going to blanket statement that by saying that everyone I've ever approached or has approached me is that way. There definitely are some genuine people out there in need. And so what I would say is, if you don't have time to have conversations with people, homeless people about what's going on, keep a pack of brand new socks in your car, because homeless people, they need socks. Keep food, keep something that's not going to spoil. that you can give to them so that they have food, so that they have clothing, whatever it is. Keep extra clothing in your trunk. There are things that you can do to help the genuine homeless person without giving them money. So that gets into what I was saying yesterday about how I was living my life a certain way that I felt like I needed to clean up my act before I could accept Christ, and so I had all this anxiety, and then I experienced this enormous sense of peace. I'd love to say that after I said that prayer that I continued to experience that peace, I continued to experience God's presence, and that everything was just easy from then on, and I didn't have any problems being completely obedient to Christ. If anything, even though I was specifically praying that God would take this temptation away from me, if anything, after that, my temptation actually went a little higher. I was doing better about being obedient to God, but I continued to have this struggle. And despite praying, despite trying to do everything I could, I was asking Casey, okay, how can I be obedient? He's like, well, you need to go to church, you need to plug into a good church. So, I ended up, Dawn Ziegler, who I mentioned before, she had gotten married in 1993, right after this happened. And when I attended their wedding, I was just asking her about the church, because I was thinking, well, if Dawn goes here, then it's got to be a pretty good church. And so I started attending that church, and then Casey also said, you also should get baptized, because now that you've made this important decision. And so I got baptized, and every time I did this, I was expecting, to experience this whole amazing thing with God. I thought I'd get immersed, and then I'd come out and I'd have another amazing experience. Nothing like that happened. I continued to struggle with trying to be obedient, because I had this perspective at that time. I knew about God's forgiveness. I knew about His grace, and I knew that everything that I had done in the past had been forgiven. But what I didn't realize was everything in the future had been forgiven as well. So I was trying to live this perfect life, but then I was also trying to not be the typical hypocritical Christian that I had experienced before. I was trying to be a genuine Christian, where I was living in complete obedience to Christ. But what I was doing was I was actually starting to forget about grace and go down that path, a little bit of becoming more like the Pharisees, where I was becoming kind of legalistic with my faith. And so that's a danger that we can have, as we can start to, fall away from that relationship, which is Jesus Christ, and we veer off path, and we start focusing on God's laws, and we almost start to get into this pattern where we're trying to earn our own salvation. Now, sometimes people will start out like I did with that relationship with Jesus, and they'll veer off the other way, and they'll go down that grace path, and they'll just continue to live how they lived before, because, well, after all, I'm forgiven, right? God's grace, it says right here in the Bible, I'm forgiven, so I might as well do whatever I want, because, I'm a Christian now. So both of those diversions are wrong. What I found later on that I needed to do was focus on that relationship with Jesus Christ, so that I did, have that obedience and that grace at the same time. That obedience, those laws that God put into the Bible, that's not for His benefit so much as it's for ours. And I can go on and on talking about obedience and grace and the relationship. In fact, those are probably going to be 3 separate days in the future, so I won't belabor it now. But my point is, I was going down this path of not really understanding. I was definitely living better, but still not a perfect life, and I was trying to understand, on top of it all, why this is wrong. I didn't understand why God would say certain things were wrong, because what I was dealing with wasn't like something that was just horribly awful. Actually, what I was doing at the time was something that was very culturally acceptable, very socially acceptable. But there's a reason why I'm not giving you all the details of it, about that, because really it's not important. What's important is that I was trying to do the right thing, and I was trying to preserve that relationship with Jesus Christ by being obedient to Him. And so a few weeks had passed, and now I found myself still, I was experiencing more joy and more peace, but certainly not on the level that Don and Casey were. And so I was trying to get there. And I was a few weeks later, I was at a convention in Amway, an Amway convention, and I was there with my group of friends, and there was a seat that was next to me that was available. And so I thought it was odd that there was a complete stranger approached me and said, "Hey, is that seat next to you available?" What's odd about that is almost everyone there is with their group. So for someone to be there by himself, looking for just one seat to sit down, that struck me as a little strange. But the way I am, I'm not someone that is, if I'm going to strike up conversation with someone, I'm not going to start talking about the weather. I'm almost honest to a fault where I, sometimes don't even have that filter, where I'm just going to tell you what's going on, tell you my life story. And that's exactly what I did with this guy. He sat down, and I shared with him, a few weeks ago, I just accepted Jesus Christ, and I'm really struggling with it. And he said, "Well, that's interesting because I'm a reverend at one of the local Lutheran churches here, so I might be able to help you with your questions." And so I see this Reverend Bill King. He was a direct answer to my prayer that I had prayed, was asking for several weeks earlier. I don't always understand God's timing on things. I don't know why it was several weeks later that this happened. I don't know why when I was baptized I didn't come up and suddenly have this amazing supernatural experience. It was actually just the only time, I guess, during all those weeks, from the time I accepted Christ to now the time that I'm meeting this gentleman, that I experienced anything really supernatural, other than those coincidences, but where I really felt something was when I felt that peace of God. And so sometimes we start to think and we start to have expectations of when God's going to do something or when he's going to move or how he's going to do it. And often he surprises us. And in this case, I was definitely surprised by that response that, I'm a reverend and I think I can answer your questions. And he did. I had all these very pointed questions about, the Bible says this is wrong. Can you tell me why that is? And, and like even getting really deep about, he was explaining it's not just sin, it's also the appearance of sin. Like even if you're doing something that's perfectly innocent, but to someone else's eyes, it's not pure. Like for example, if you're having lunch with an attractive woman and you're just talking business, and there's nothing going on there, someone might perceive that a completely different way. And so if through that perception you could actually mislead them down the wrong path by setting the wrong example for them. So like all of his answers to the questions that I was having made perfect sense. And certainly in that example too, where you're having an innocent lunch with someone who you find attractive, that is kind of how a lot of affairs start. It never starts out hot and heavy. It's going to be something that starts out innocent, and then you get to know each other a little better, and then before you know it, you start developing feelings for each other. And I know that's the story of a lot of friends of mine that have gone through divorce and whatnot. Is they just didn't know how to put up the right shields in those certain moments. In those things that would lead them into being tempted later on down the line. So he answered all my questions for me. He is someone that I haven't talked to him since that time. It was just something that I believe God sent him there for me in that moment when I had those very specific questions that I needed answers to. And so I just would like to thank Reverend Bill King once more for helping me so much on that day.